Beautiful morning we have today in Taiwan. Birds are birding, clouds are clouding, and there is something oddly serene about that subtle haze of pollution over the horizon. Anyway, hello, welcome to this stream. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm FEARSONA. You can call me Sona, and I'm your friendly neighborhood true crime VTuber, here to give you full body chills. How are you guys doing? I hope you're having a wonderful day, because I am about to ruin it for you with this case, with today's case. Pepperbox, hello. Hello, Sona in the chat. Hello, hello. Also, first and foremost, I just wanted to remind you guys to read the chat rules. It's all in my description, in the description of this video. Please try to follow the rules. Don't give mods a hard time, because they want to enjoy the stream too. So just make sure to be good. And latest news from Texas, Amaranth shot a guy. What? Wait, hold up. What? Excuse me? I didn't know about this. I am very much unaware. Oh my god. Okay, I guess I'm gonna have something to read after the stream, but holy shit, we know what's up on the dark corner of the internet. Yeah, exactly. Please remember, if you like my content, if you like my channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications to be notified whenever I show up in my little dark corner of the internet. Joshua, thank you so much for the super. Can Intan-kun enjoy the beautiful day too? Yes, through the eyes of imagination. Intan-kun just doesn't like sunlight. Intan-kun doesn't like to do anything outside, so there's that. I'm protecting Intan-kun, okay? That's all for his safety. Oh, I always follow the rules. That's good. That's good, Melissa. I'm happy to hear that. I'm playing Cobblemon at the moment, so I may be quiet. No worries, Fabian. If you just want to listen, that's completely fine. If you just want to lurk and just listen to the case, that's completely fine. Kuro, anyway, I'm exploring in the mysterious website called Instacam. Oh, I don't know that. Which allows you to spy cams that aren't secure or doesn't have passwords. Jesus Christ. Enjoy your stream today with body chills. What? I'm sorry, what? Excuse, that's a website? I have you on my TV. Okay, great. Great. Enjoy. That's a lie. She has Intan-kun chained in the basement. That's not true. That's not true. Intan-kun has a, five-star suite in the basement. So don't you worry about that. He's fine. Okay. So this is the last stream of the week. Well, the first stream of the week. It was supposed to be the last stream of the week, technically on Sunday, but I was feeling kind of under the weather. I wasn't feeling too great, so I just needed a little more time for notes, for research, for preparing my slides and everything else. So I apologize that the stream was kind of postponed till Monday. I hope you guys can forgive me for that. Hey Sona, Alberto, hello. Thank you so much. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. Hey Sona and Chad, just passing by to see how are you all doing, as I'm heading to a boxing gym. Ooh, hope you have a nice night or evening. Also, free Intan-kun. No. Also, Alberto, you can still listen to the case if you're gonna be training, if you're gonna be, unless, wait, it's a boxing gym. You probably want to focus. That's okay. It's okay then. Okay. All right. So, today's case. Let's just jump right into it. Today's case is pretty disturbing. I'm just gonna warn you right now. There are some details in this case that are very, very hard to listen to, because it's very important for me to mention those details in the case, but at the same time they are incredibly disturbing. So if you aren't really good with graphic descriptions of violence, of murder, and just graphic content, you may wanna, not listen to this case. Or I'm gonna warn you guys, like, when the part is coming up and I'm gonna be discussing it. But just so you know, like, it's gonna be pretty scary. It's gonna get pretty scary. Okay, let's begin. Arcadia, a quiet community nestled between Scottsdale and Phoenix is known for its picturesque streets and the Phoenix Grand Canal that runs through it. It was here near Osborne Road and 48th Street that 17-year-old Melanie Burness, I mispronounced it, I'm so sorry, but 17-year-old Melanie Burness lived with her mother in a modest single-level home. Melanie was actually tall for her age. She was standing at 5'10" and had an athletic build. She was the kind of teenager who really, really loved adventure, and especially when it came to biking. Like, she was really hyped about biking. Like, she loved it. She loved biking alongside the Phoenix Grand Canal. Like, that was the bike route for her and her friend. So Melanie's best friend, Jessica Preach, and the two were practically inseparable since 5th grade. Jessica's family treated Melanie like their own daughter, and both girls loved to hang out and go on those long bike rides. You know what I mean? Like, that was just their thing. Like, they would hang out a little bit, you know, like they would sometimes hang out at the restaurant where Jessica worked, and then they would just kind of have plans like, okay, well, after your shift we're gonna go on this long bike ride, and you know, it was just their thing. And it was often, like they were often using the Grand Canal, and it was just like this 12-mile stretch of a bike lane, basically. Like, you could just go from Glendale through Phoenix to Tampa, and, you know, like, and just like do it in one go on this one route. Okay, so whenever they would go on those bike rides, they would be gone for hours without contacting their parents, but their parents weren't exactly thrilled about that one. But you know what? Like, that's fine. They always came back for dinner, and they were always fine. They tried to not stay out after dark. You know, it usually was during the day, so it was all okay, you know? So what's the harm? Let them be. But unfortunately, on Tuesday, September 21st, 1993, something felt off. Melanie had stopped by Caro's restaurant on Thomas Road, where Jessica worked as a hostess. Melanie was still a little upset about the argument that she had with a classmate earlier that day, and she sat down at the bar, ordered a snack, and asked Jessica, like, oh, are you gonna be, you know, are you still on the shift, or, you know, like, are you ending soon, and can we go on this bike ride, you know, like, are you up for it? And Jessica actually promised her that, yes, of course, like, I'm gonna join you. I know that I can see that you're kind of troubled by, you know, you're kind of upset about this argument earlier today, so yeah, sure, let's go on a bike ride and let's talk about it. And Jessica said to Melanie, like, hey, I can go with you, but as long as my boss doesn't make me stay late at work, right? And unfortunately, Jessica did end up working overtime that day, and Melanie left the restaurant alone. What happened next would leave the Arcadia community in shock and set off a chain of events that would remain unsolved for decades. Melanie Burness, the tall, athletic teenager with a love for adventure, would never return home that night. The following morning, on Wednesday, September 22nd, 1993, a grim discovery would shatter the peaceful neighborhood of Arcadia. Cyclists traveling along the canal, this usual route that Melanie and Jessica, would take, noticed something unsettling. As one of the cyclists pedaled along the bike path, they rode through what appeared to be a puddle of blood. And nearby this puddle of blood, they also saw what looked like bloody drag marks leading around a small tree and toward the canal bank. Alarmed, the cyclists returned home and immediately called the police. When officers arrived, they made a horrifying discovery, and this is where the graphic content starts. So if you don't want to listen, you don't have to. But they made a horrifying discovery. Submerged in the murky water was a human body, and police divers were called and carefully retrieved the remains, which were then transported to the medical examiner's office for identification. At 12:30 p.m., Officer Randy Chapman visited Melanie's mother, so her home. And, at first, Melanie's mom, Marlene, was very hopeful. She thought that the officer was bringing good news, that they had found Melanie safe and sound, and she will be coming home soon. However, it soon became very clear that she will never see her daughter alive again. Without revealing the grim details of the discovery, the officer requested a photo of Melanie. The mom was distraught. She was already very concerned, very distraught about the fact that the officer told her that, hey, I believe that we found your daughter and she is not coming home. She's dead. But the mom, Marlene, argued that, she was like asking the officer, like, why wouldn't you bring me down to the coroner's office to identify Melanie herself? Like myself, like I know my daughter. I can just go with you and I can help with the investigation. I can help identify my own child. But Officer Chapman didn't want to say too much about it. But he was very insistent. Like, he insisted that, believe me, it's better if you don't see the body. It was that bad. It was that horrible. So this photo would later be used to confirm the identity of the body pulled from the canal. And I'm sorry, my stomach is making weird sounds and I can't stop it. It's just, I don't know, like it's bothering me like a lot. Okay, so this is the horrible part. So when investigators examined the body, two chilling details stood out. First, Melanie was dressed in this like turquoise or blue zip-up lycra swimsuit, which was an item her family and friends didn't recognize as hers, so it wasn't hers. Alongside the swimsuit, she was still wearing the tennis shoes and socks that she had left home in, so the shoes and socks were hers, but the swimsuit was not. So according to the police officers, the investigators, it appeared that the killer had redressed her after her death, which added a disturbing layer to the crime. And then the second detail was even more disturbing. Carved into Melanie's chest were the letters WSC and a cross. These markings suggested a calculated and ritualistic act, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. And then there was another chilling plot twist. So the path where Melanie's body was found had already gained notoriety after the discovery of another body of a young woman several months earlier, like 10 months, I think it was 10 months earlier, on November 8th, 1992, so almost a year before Melanie. 22-year-old Angela Brosso's boyfriend called 911 to report her missing. See, Angela, who was just days away from celebrating her birthday, her 22nd birthday, had left for a bike ride and hadn't returned for a long time. So her boyfriend had even baked her a cake while she was out, unaware that she would never come home to enjoy it. When police arrived, they began their search along the same canal, right? Like the Phoenix Grand Canal, the bike trail. So a route that Angela frequently used for her rides. And it actually didn't take them long to find something alarming: blood on the trail. And again, drag markings. And when they followed this trail of blood, officers made a horrifying discovery: Angela's body, but the body was headless. So it was just the body, there was no head. The scene was gruesome. Angela was found naked except for her shoes and socks, which is very similar to Melanie. Her body bore marks and wounds to her genital area, and a deep cut ran down her sternum. A former Phoenix officer, Sergeant Troy Hillman, said this about Angela's murder. He said, "It looked like the predator had actually tried to cut her in half, but was unsuccessful." Yeah. So there's the body. The body is naked with only socks and shoes, kind of like Melanie, except Melanie was like redressed in this swimsuit that wasn't hers. And then there were marks on her body, and she was like also cut on her like chest, almost like the killer wanted to cut her in half, but just failed. Yeah. So Angela's head was found 1.5 miles away from the body's location, 11 days after the initial discovery, and the head was found 300 feet away from where Melanie's remains were discovered almost a year later. So it was all in the same area. It was just that close. So when Angela Brosso and Melanie Burness were murdered within months of each other in the same area, investigators were very cautious. You know, they knew how quickly rumors of a serial killer could spread panic through the community without concrete evidence. Like, they didn't want to jump to that conclusion because without concrete evidence, they like really hesitated to link the two cases publicly. That could really freak out everyone. But you know what? They didn't have to wait for the evidence long to come to light, because soon they got what they needed. So autopsies revealed striking similarities between the two victims. Both Angela and Melanie had died from stab wounds to their backs, wounds that had pierced their aortas and lungs. These injuries were not only fatal, but also pointed to like a methodical and violent attacker. Additionally, both women showed signs of sexual assault and ritualistic aspects. So those markings, the letters carved into Melanie, and just other marks that were found on Angela and Melanie, like both of them, which further solidified the connection between the two crimes, not to mention the location. Did it also have I don't think, there's no information that Angela had WSC mark carved into her, but it is mentioned that she had some like marks, like very specific, like very methodical or like very intentional markings. Like they were just not random cuts. Like she didn't have random cuts on her. It was just like, those were like other markings. And then Melanie had this like very distinct WSC, right? Like markings. Okay. So for years, the murders of Angela and Melanie remained unsolved, leaving investigators and the community frustrated. DNA evidence had been collected from both crime scenes, but it was like early 1990s, right? Like 1992, 1993. And well, truth be told, the technology wasn't advanced enough to definitively link the cases to a suspect. That changed only a few years later, in 1999, when forensic advancements allowed experts to officially connect the two murders through DNA. Like, it wasn't enough because it didn't identify the specific person as the killer, but it allowed them to connect both cases to each other, because they were like, oh, this is the same DNA. Now we can prove that this is the same DNA from both crime scenes. It's just one person, right? However, even with this breakthrough, no suspects were identified at the time. And Baxter is asking, how far away is this from a college? Because I'm getting the odd feeling this might be either the acronym for a college or a fraternity house. I'm not sure how far it was from the college. Like, I didn't have any information. There wasn't any information mentioned that it was like, oh, close to any college. And it was like, there wasn't any indication that these letters were like meant any like fraternity or any specific college. So I don't know, like if you find something, then by all means mention it, because maybe I just missed something. But I didn't find in the sources, like there wasn't any mention of that. Okay, so the cases grew cold, but in 2011, which is it's kind of horrible because this is 20 years after. 20 years after the murders, almost. So 2011, a local news station decided to revisit this story, reigniting public interest. This prompted cold case detectives to reopen the investigation. By this time, DNA technology had evolved significantly from 1999 and definitely from 1992. Investigators were now able to use the suspect's DNA profile to search, databases for like genetic connections, like genealogy. I hate that word to pronounce that word because it's horrible. So this is a method that had proven successful in solving other cold cases, right? Like, they upload the DNA sample to a database for with other people's, because like other people will upload their DNA data to said base, and then investigators can actually link this person to relatives, potential family members, and then they can figure it out. Like, okay, this person is related to our killer, which means we have to investigate their family and see who was in that location, or like who doesn't have an alibi and who might have been responsible for the killings, right? So this is what they were doing. And in late December 2014, forensic analysts ran the data profile and got a match. Poor Sona's pronunciation. I know, I'm sorry. It's just, it just falls apart. Okay, and Jahan, you are late a little bit, but we are like halfway through the case. Okay, so they got a match in 2014. The results pointed to the Miller family with 5 potential male suspects, and one name in particular stood out: Bryan Patrick Miller, known in the local community as the Zombie Hunter, which is his steampunk cosplay public persona. As the investigation delved deeper into Bryan Miller's past, they uncovered a history that was both shocking and deeply troubling. Long before the murders of Angela Brosso and Melanie Bernas, Miller's behavior had raised red flags and some alarms. So back in 1989, when Miller was still a teenager, he confessed to law enforcement that he had stabbed a woman in the back. He claimed that the woman resembled his mother, who he alleged had a history of abusing him. And because of his age, Miller was sent to juvenile detention. However, just before his release on his 18th birthday, his mother presented a chilling letter to the court, a letter she claimed to have found in his bedroom. It was kind of this note, this like a very strange list of things to do. Okay, so the letter was titled The Plan, and it outlined in horrifying detail Miller's violent fantasies. It was described as a step-by-step guide to committing heinous crimes, heinous acts against women. It included graphic descriptions of sexual violence and ended with the victim's murder, right? Like the target's murder. And it listed like kidnap the girl, tie her up in the truck. The third one, I don't know what it says. And the fourth one says cut her clothes off. Sound familiar? Because it does to me. Melanie, Angela. Melanie being redressed. Angela being completely naked. Okay, but here's the kicker. Despite the disturbing nature of the letter, Miller was released in 1990. How? I don't know. Like, I guess because he served as an 18-year-old, like he served his time in the juvenile prison or juvenile center. So they were like, well, it's not enough. Like, it's not enough to suggest anything like, that he's gonna commit something like that again, or he's gonna try this. Like, this is just a note. Like, they just didn't think that this note was meaningful. They were just like, oh, well, this is a teenager's, I don't know, fantasy, whatever, like just, he was just, this is a joke, or this is just kind of like, teenagers' weird writings. So let's ignore that. Nothing's gonna happen. There's no way, right? Yeah, nothing's gonna happen. So Bryan's life after his release only added to the suspicion, which again brings me back to why the hell did you release him in the 1990s if later it just like followed, like just other suspicious activities followed. Okay, so in the mid 1990s, following the murders of Angela and Melanie, Bryan married and moved to Washington State. Like he pretty much immediately after the murders, he immediately like married, like suspiciously quickly married and moved out of the state. So he and his wife had a daughter in Washington. And during this time, he was involved in another stabbing incident, this time involving a woman named Melissa Ramirez. So Miller claimed that Ramirez had tried to rob him and that he acted in self-defense, like, oh, it was not an active attack. I did not try to kill her. It was just, you know, like, oh, she tried to rob me. That's why I protected myself, right? So Melissa told authorities a different story. She told the officers that Bryan had offered to give her a ride and even lend her a phone to make a call. But the situation took a terrifying turn when he allegedly approached her with what she described as a 12-inch knife. She claimed that Miller stabbed her multiple times in the back, leaving her with injuries that required 30 stitches. Stabbed her in the back. Again, so similar, like hint, hint. He went for the back. Would that be, first of all, like she was there, like I don't have any information if there was like, oh, a trial. Well, I mean, there was a trial. And she had, like, apparently Melissa Ramirez was, like, I don't have that much information about that trial and like proceedings, like why the next thing happened. But, well, she had proof, right? Like Melissa had wounds in her back, 30 stitches, and yeah, cuts to her back. And she was just like, how does this, you know, like, how does this make sense? If I was the one attacking him, if I was the one that tried to rob him and attacked him first, how does it make sense that I have wounds to my back and not to my front? If he was quote unquote defending himself, how does that make sense, right? So I don't have that much information, like how did the trial go, like how did this like legal proceedings go? But in the end, the jury acquitted Bryan because he wasn't convicted. His DNA was never entered into law enforcement databases again, right? Like that's, well, I mean, it wasn't like entered into the law enforcement databases, but that's why, like, oh, they discovered, right, like in 2014 they actually got a match to his family. They didn't get a match to Bryan. They matched the DNA of the killer to the Miller family in general because someone from the Miller family submitted their DNA. Okay, so that was super, super weird and negligent, to say the least. So in 2006, Miller and his wife divorced and he returned to Phoenix with his daughter. Investigators also discovered that Miller had an interest in cosplay and steampunk, which is a subculture that blends Victorian era aesthetics with futuristic elements. And at the time, Miller was known as the Zombie Hunter, a character he created and often portrayed at parades and festivals. He would dress in a trench coat, goggles, helmet, you know, those steampunk elements, and he was carrying a prop gun. And Miller even drove an old police car that, you know, completed the look. This is actually the police car behind him. Like, oh, he would just kind of decorate it with blood, right? Like he would add blood marks to make it seem like, oh, you know, this is how zombies like attacked the car, right? So that was his thing. Meanwhile, the investigation into the deaths of Angela and Melanie was still unsolved and still very much ongoing. This is 2006. So this is years after, 10 years, over 10 years after the murders. Oh snap, Phoenix, that's my home state. Hey, I did visit Phoenix. It's beautiful. By the way, Arizona, highly recommend. Oh my God, it's beautiful. Like the Grand Canyon, obviously, but just in general, if you drive in like from Grand Canyon back to Phoenix, it's just everything is beautiful. I don't know, like at sunset, oh my god. And oh, Sedona is beautiful too. Okay. Is that legal to drive that? Well, I mean, he did make it, you know, like the police car was old, and obviously like he did make it very obvious that it's not an official police car. Like somehow he did kind of edit it or something, and he would only drive it like during the events or parades. And yeah, like apparently it was like made sure that it was all good, you know, like also it was 2006. I don't know, you could do anything. Okay, so the investigation into Angela and Melanie's deaths was still very much ongoing, very much unsolved. And in the midst of it, detectives realized that they had overlooked a crucial tip from all the way back to 1994, a phone call. So there was this guy at the time, like he was, oh, I mean, I did mention him, Troy Hillman. So he was, at the time, he was a sergeant. Later, he was a detective. So Sergeant Troy Hillman said that, quote, an anonymous caller called back in 1994 and said that they knew something about the bodysuit, and that he believed it to be the same bodysuit put on Melanie in the possession of Bryan. So the bodysuit, the blue swimsuit or bodysuit that Melanie was found wearing, that did not belong to her, apparently belonged to Bryan Miller. This was from all the way back in 1994. 10 years earlier. Like, now we're in 2006. They found him finally in 2014. They finally matched him. 2014. 30, well, I mean, almost 30 years later. Well, now we're 30 years later, but 20 years. That's a huge clue, and they didn't really like look into it. They missed it. Or I don't know how it happened, but they failed to follow up on this phone call. They didn't find anything. They didn't really connect it to Bryan for some reason. Okay, but later, you know, obviously when they went back to this clue to, like, they rediscovered it, right? Like, discovered this clue. Maybe it was miscommunication. Maybe it was like, oh, failure for, like, maybe someone else was taking that call, you know, some officer that wasn't on the case, or, you know, like, it might have been a miscommunication. Anyway, to confirm their suspicions, police needed Miller's DNA, right? But you can't really get him to, right? Like, oh, you can't really arrest him just yet. I guess they could have, like, officially bring charges, but they thought, like, oh, we don't have hard evidence against him just yet, so we can't really, like, demand, I think he's gonna bounce, or I think he's gonna somehow weasel his way out of giving us his DNA. So, well, I mean, I think they still went not necessarily like legal route, but okay, apparently it was fine. So in a clever move, officers posed as employers offering him a security job at the distribution facility where he worked. So like kind of a promotion or something. And during the meeting, they collected his DNA from a water glass he used. And the results were a match. Miller's DNA linked him to the murders of Angela Brosso and Melanie Barnes. And Craze Rice Goddess, hello, welcome. And Chorus the Crow, hello, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Did they dig through his trash? No, they just yeah, close enough. Yeah, like they just used his water glass, but I just kind of failed to see how, like, kind of demanding, you know, like going after him straight up and just, you know, demanding that, hey, you have to submit DNA because we have strong suspicion that you are a prime suspect. You have to submit your DNA. And instead they were just like, you know what, we're just gonna lie about everything. We're gonna trick you into thinking that, oh, you know, we're your employer and you're getting a promotion, and we're just still gonna test your DNA without your consent anyway. I don't know how that works. Well, I guess it's legal. I guess, like, oh, if they have a strong suspicion that this is their killer, like, oh, by all means, right? Like, by all means necessary, you have to get the DNA. Who knows? Yeah, he was just tricked. I don't know. Okay. So when confronted about the results, which DNA doesn't lie. I mean, sometimes it can, like in very, very rare cases, like, oh, you know, there's been cases where the DNA is contaminated, maybe mixed with something, maybe someone else's, you know, like just, but that's like, I think nowadays it doesn't lie, especially in 2000s, like it doesn't lie. Like they really are careful with that. Okay, so when confronted, Miller denied any involvement and he said, I don't see, quote, I don't see how that's possible. I didn't kill anyone. But the evidence told a different story. Miller's ex-wife actually came forward and agreed to testify against him during his 2022 murder trial. So this happened, the trial happened very, very recently. She revealed some disturbing details about their relationship, including his violent tendencies. So Detective Hillman recounted the testimony of the ex-wife, and he said, quote, she told us some troubling stuff about their sex life. Particularly, he would bring a knife and carve on her and lick the blood. Wait, that's not it. I was going to zoom in. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so Miller's he was insistent that his ex-wife so Miller's insistence on his ex-wife's engaging in a violent role play, like he was very insistent that she would, like she has to engage with him in like this violent role play in their sex life. And this had ultimately led to the end of their marriage because the ex-wife was just like, this is sick, that you're sick and I don't want to do this. And yeah, it's too much. So Bryan Miller's ex-wife provided investigators with a shocking account of another alleged crime. One that, if true, because this is being investigated right now, and it's another murder. So if true, it would reveal a level of brutality that was beyond disturbing. So according to a transcript of the wife's testimony, Miller had confessed to her about the fatal stabbing of a young girl he described as an intellectually challenged Girl Scout in her mid-teens. This alleged killing, his wife said, took place after Miller was released from juvenile detention from an earlier attempt murder charge. And at the time, he was living in an apartment located north of central Phoenix. The ex-wife recounted Miller's chilling story. So she said that the girl had knocked on his door and he pulled her aside, cut her throat, and placed her body in the bathtub. He claimed he intended to preserve her body with cold water, but accidentally ran hot water instead. And according to the wife, Miller then dismembered the body and placed the remains in a trash can. When neighbors complained about the smell, Miller allegedly told them that some meat in his kitchen had gone bad. Oh my God, this is exactly the same as Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer would say the same thing to his neighbors. Like his neighbors would come, like if you know this case, the Jeffrey Dahmer case, yeah, he would say the same thing. The neighbors started, because he was dismembering his victims in his apartment, and the neighbors started complaining like, hey, what is Jeffrey, like what is going on? Like this is your apartment, like there's some foul odor coming from your apartment, like it stinks, do something about it. And he's just like, what is that? And he would just tell them like, oh, I got some meat and it just went bad in my freezer, and it's just, yeah, like I'm so sorry, I'm gonna get rid of it, right? Like, and then he would get rid of it. So essentially Bryan Miller said the same. Like he would just tell them like, oh, some meat in my kitchen just had gone bad. I think he had taken that from Jeffrey Dahmer. Like that's, I'm pretty sure he knows about it. So Miller didn't really mention the girl's name. Parts of his ex-wife's account were corroborated by investigators, and the victim was actually identified as this girl, 13-year-old girl named Brandy. She was a girl with developmental delays whose mental and emotional age was closer to 9 or 10 than 13. And Brandy had visited on May 26, 1992, while knocking on doors for a book drive. She was last seen less than 70 feet from Miller's apartment. I don't have her last name. I just have the first name, Brandy. And there's not much information about that, but you know, there's this, that it's a real person. And Miller's neighbors at the time did recall, like when they were interviewed by the police, like recently, they did recall a horrible, terrible odor coming from his home. A smell they described as worse than rotting food. They were just like, there's no way this is just rotting food. Like, this is too horrible. Like, did an animal like die in his apartment? Like, what is going on? But they never really investigate, right? Like, they never really insisted that he showed them like what's going on in his apartment, right? And according to them, the stench was so overwhelming that they eventually like after, I don't know, like however many months, but they eventually staged an intervention, cleaning his apartment while he was away. This occurred in the fall of 1992, so several months after Brandy's disappearance. However, no remains were found during this cleanup, so it means that he removed the remains, but the stench just stayed in the apartment, right? And it honestly remains unclear, like what he did. What did he do with the remains? So there was no surveillance camera at Miller's apartment complex at the time, which means there was no video that would show Brandy approaching Miller's home. I'm sorry, I have to sneeze, probably. Do I? Maybe not. Okay, so there's no video showing Brandy approaching Miller's home, and because it was 1992, well, cameras were toasters, but it also wasn't really common for, especially for young kids like Brandy, to be like carrying around a cell phone. Like, cell phones in general weren't, like, they were more common, but they weren't that common, definitely not common for kids to carry around, right? So she didn't have a cell phone, and that means investigators couldn't really like pinpoint her location through cell phone data, right? So cell phone signal. Even a forensic search of Miller's apartment didn't really reveal much. They found some blood, but it didn't match either Miller or anyone connected to the case. And Miller himself denied knowing Brandy or having had anything to do with her death. Well, Miller's connection to Brandy's case doesn't have enough evidence just yet to bring actual charges against him yet. And, you know, bring this case to trial. The investigation is still very much ongoing, and Bryan Miller is their prime suspect. So I don't have the full name of the victim, but we know that this investigation is real. This was a real victim. It was a real person, and he is connected to her death. Okay, so at Miller's trial, because it got to the trial, right? So Miller's trial for the murders of Angela and Melanie, Miller's defense didn't argue his innocence. Instead, they claimed that his abusive childhood had left him mentally incapable of being responsible for his actions. And the jury wasn't convinced. Thank God, because I swear to God, if they just kind of released him, acquitted him again, based on, oh, well, he had a difficult childhood and he didn't know what he was doing. Like, he's incapable of making his own decisions. And yet he made a decision to move to Washington. He made the decision to get married. He made the decision to have a daughter. I don't know. To me, it sounds like he is pretty capable of making his own decisions. But yes, the jury wasn't convinced. And on April 11th, 2023, so more than 30 years after the murders, Bryan Patrick Miller was found guilty of the kidnappings, sexual assault, and murders of Angela Brasso and Melanie Bernas. And Bryan Miller was sentenced to death. Although this sentence is expected to be appealed. His defense lawyer is expected to appeal the verdict, so we don't know if this is gonna actually, this sentence gonna be executed or not, but for now, he is officially on death row. And finally, they caught him. Yes, they did. I'm glad that they did catch him. Long overdue, because it took them 20 years to actually catch him, to actually arrest him for good, and bring him to trial and bring the charges against him. I do hope that even if his sentence is, the death sentence is overturned, he is still gonna be put in prison for like 3 life sentences, or like at least 2 for Melanie and Angela. But I hope that they will also connect him to the Brandy case, because it's just too suspicious. Like, it just falls into place too closely. Like, it's just too close to home. And I hope that they will actually get information about Brandy and, you know, investigate it properly this time and possibly find her remains somewhere. And yeah, justice is served. I hope so. I do hope so. Even if he doesn't get the death sentence, if he appeals and it's overturned, I still think that he's gonna stay in prison for life and without possibility of parole, because holy shit. I'm glad they solved this, but I admit that I feel bad for his daughter. Hope she is doing well. I did actually find her picture, but I decided not to publish it, because not to show it, because I don't think there's a point, and you know, like, she doesn't have a role in this case, and she's not guilty of anything, obviously. Like, her only guilt is that, well, guilt, like, her only I guess sin is that her father is a fuck up. So obviously that's not really her fault. She doesn't, right, like, she didn't choose the family. Yeah, but I was well, I mean, I did show the picture of the wife, but the wife actually helped the investigation, and yeah, like, I decided not to show the picture of the daughter, because what's the point? And Chorus D Crow, I just came and left and came back. What is going on? Did I miss the whole thing? Yes, you did miss the whole thing. Why did you leave? Why did you leave that? Why? Okay, that is it. That's all for today. This was actually a shorter case than I thought. I thought it would be longer for some reason, but I had so many, like, my notes were just so long. There were like 6 pages of notes. Jesus. Sometimes I just lose track of how much notes, like how long my notes are. Anyway, but that's it for the case. We did have another case on Patreon if you're interested to hear about the murder of Linda Spence. That one was another pretty terrifying, pretty disturbing case from Scotland. You can also listen to me struggle with the names of locations of towns in Scotland, because yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. So most of the time I was just like, this is the location. I am not gonna try to pronounce it because it's horrible to pronounce. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna fail like that. So you guys can just read it in your mind. But yeah, there was another case that I covered. It was pretty horrifying as well. That one is still kind of open because they're looking for the body, even though the suspects were caught and charged. But yes, the body of the victim is still being, you know, like, it's still unknown where the victim is. But yeah, if you're interested, because it was pretty complicated case, like, at one point it was crazy, but yeah, you can check it out. You can go to patreon.com/FEARSONA and check out the posts. Some of them actually I did switch, because I've noticed that Patreon added this feature where I can actually post something that, like, a post that is locked, right? So you don't necessarily have to join Patreon as a member. You can also unlock individual posts by, like, I don't know, like, by unlocking like just one post for a price. So yeah, you can, if you're interested in, you know, hearing about the case, then you can check it out. Yeah, there's an option. Like, you can actually unlock individual posts. Like, if you're not feeling like, okay, well, I don't want to join just yet, or I can't join for whatever reason, like, the individual posts are also available to unlock. Not all of them, just a couple of recent ones, because this feature was just added. But I'm gonna try to switch. I'm gonna try to, like, set it up for other posts, like the earlier posts, and just archive, so that you guys can access it. Oh yeah, I was wondering about that. Yeah. There's an option to unlock individual posts. So if you feel like, okay, well, I'm interested in this particular case, but I can't necessarily join Patreon fully just yet. Oh, okay, I'm just gonna unlock this one post and listen to this one case. Then yeah, go ahead. And oh yeah, there's this case of someone killing over My Little Pony. And another that involved a Hello Kitty plush. The Hello Kitty murder, I think I covered it before. But yeah. My Little Pony, who? Both are horrifying. Jesus Christ. I have not heard about the My Little Pony murder or attack or anything, but I guess murder. What? Wait, that's crazy. I think I'm gonna look into that then. Anyway, Sona, do you explore dark web sometimes? I do, not that often because it freaks me out, but I do explore some dark web cases. I think I did cover one case from Japan that was like connected to dark web. And yeah, like, and also some horrifying, like some disturbing websites from like the deep web. But yeah, like, well, myself, I don't go to those websites because that's dangerous, and yeah, just don't do that. But yeah, there are those. I do have some cases, some streams where I cover some pretty disturbing stuff from the internet. Okay, why My Little Pony though? Jesus. And probably Wednesday at 9 p.m. EST or 6 p.m. PST. What? Wait. What did I do? Man, you're awesome. Can you tell me when the next stream is? Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's true. Bacon is right. It's probably gonna be on... Yeah, Random Anime Lover. It's probably going to be on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. I usually stream at 6 p.m. Pacific time, or maybe 5 p.m. sometimes, but usually I go with 6 p.m. So if you're interested, the next stream is going to be on Wednesday. And thank you so much. That's it for today, you guys. I have finally, like, I've received the files for my 3D model. So the new design. The debut is going to be either, like, if I can prepare it, I'm probably not gonna prepare everything like that quickly, but because I have a couple of things, but either in March, like at the end of March or early April, I will definitely try to kind of have a pre-debut for my Patreon members, so you guys will see the model and I'm gonna tinker with it. So it might be scuffed, but I'm gonna try my best to set it up and show it off to you guys, because I'm super excited to start that new chapter on this channel. Hey. Okay, and as for anything else, yeah, like I'm gonna be back on Wednesday with maybe some scary videos, probably some scary videos, maybe another case. Well, there's definitely gonna be cases this week. Definitely one on Patreon, definitely one here on YouTube, so you guys can look forward to that. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay safe out there. Always lock your doors and windows. Bear your hexes. Until the next time. Bye! Joshua, thank you so much for the Super Sona. Your 3D model is the bee's knees. It looks great. Oh yeah, because I did show you guys a sneak peek, a little sneak peek in my last Patreon stream. So yeah, you guys, if you are a Patreon member, you can actually take a look. Just, you know, like have a sneak peek at the new design. But yeah, thank you so much. Oh, I had a fun fact. Wait, I just saw this like one... Oh my god, okay. So apparently in 2017 there was this scientist that began a global search to find a mate for Jeremy, a rare left-coiled snail. 2 possible mates were found for Jeremy, but they actually mated with each other instead of Jeremy. So wah. Jeremy was, yeah, aww. Jeremy was left alone, and the possible potential mates just mated with each other, and yeah, and Jeremy was just forever alone. Oh, that's sad. Anyway, Jeremy was third wheel. Yeah, exactly. Jeremy the snail. Anyway, thank you so much, you guys, again. I hope you enjoyed the stream, and I will see you guys on Wednesday. So until then, until next time, bye!